and welcome to Motorsport Radio. I'm Josh Howes and joined by Lester Forbes. We've got a very exciting show today, interviewing ACDC frontman and motorsport racer Brian Johnson. Brian, how are you?
Hey Josh, how are you? Lester and Josh.
Excellent. I'm wonderful, thank you. It's so great to be speaking to you.
Well, fantastic. It's lovely to talk to you, lads. Anything to do with cars, right up my Strasse, as we say in Germany.
Yeah, well, I've been preparing quite a lot for this, because obviously it's, I guess you don't get asked that much, really. We're just solely focused on, cars, motorsport and racing and stuff, do you? It's all about a bit
it's usually, the steer towards the band. But I understand, racing and the rock and roll, I always think I run in parallel lanes. It's exciting, and especially the racing bit. It's kind of exciting, and the same as being on stage. It's like when you're racing, you can't give it all away before on the first corner. You've always got to pace yourself. So, but anyway, shoot, lads, shoot. Music is always, getting on stage in front of I've had about 50, 60, up to 100,000 people, in a big stage. It's pretty exciting. But, also, on a rolling start, and you hear the engines beside you all roaring, and even though you've had the drivers meeting and they say, now, gentlemen, remember, let's not be silly. It's a long race, and we don't all have to dive try to get to the corner, first corner first.
We were talking about...
out of the window.
Yeah, well, we were sort of debating between us whether to mention a little incident that he had a couple of years ago at Silverstone, but I guess I just did.
No, that's fine, me son. I was there, and, when I found out the A35s, I was very good. And I met with David Coulthard. He drinks in the same pub as me. And he came when we were having a chat, and he said, I'll see that you're driving one of those A35s. And I said, I am. I said, for the stars in the cars race or whatever it is. And he said, Brian, he said, I took one of those out. It's the only time I've raced where it didn't smile. Not once. He said, I was terrified. And, and I had a test. I just had one test, because, and I had my Mini there. And I was also going to race with Ron Maiden in his Ginetta. And so, we were testing around there, and we were doing what we normally did. And I came to Beckett's, and I did what I normally do, but it didn't work. The front went down, and the back went up, and I suddenly realized this car was way too tall, and you had to have a lot of experience to race these things. And I went over, a couple of times. The door came off, and I remember watching it, because I've never had an accident in racing. I've had a tip up the back, but I knew this was serious. But amazingly, I got out, and I just went, my God. And but that's the first time it's ever happened to me, and it was just my own inexperience, I guess, of racing, because I'd just taken the Mini out about 30 minutes before. And, of course, the 64 Mini is just, it's just so much fun, you just let them, you just four-wheel drift around those corners, and you got so much confidence, and, you're just smiling all the time racing those things. And then I got into this little thing, and I'm afraid I ran out of talent, if you'll excuse me.
Possibly the only time ever you did that. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, usually you say, well, I ran out of road. But no, there was no excuse. It was all purely, inexperience and just trying to do what I do with normal cars, but Yeah, it was. It certainly wake you up in the morning, that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah,
And
I bet you
then,
weren't the same.
No, I was. I think there's an old saying in racing that my sphincter was going like a squirrel's nose when I got out.
And
Yeah,
has
you can
anything
laugh.
like that ever happened out on the streets, out on the normal roads?
No, I don't think I've ever had anything. You know, when I was 18, 19, me and two friends decided to drive to Italy to visit my family in Frascati. And we were driving back, you know, and it was a Renault, a Renault 9 or something. You know, it had a little rear engine. And it was like the Dauphine, but it was more squared off. And the driver was a guy called Rob Conlon, and he wouldn't let me or George Beveridge drive. And he said, you know, we've got to make the ferry because we'll start work on Monday morning. And we were doing about 70 down the N7. You know, this is before freeways and motorways. And he fell asleep. And there was a family having a picnic on the side of the road in a Peugeot estate car, and he just plowed into it. Oh. And George went through the windshield. I was in the back, you know, and we went over about 3 or 4 times, and the roof crushed down. So the roof was at the door level, you know, the door handle level. Jeez. And I've got a photograph of it somewhere. And anyway, it turned about 3 times, and George was in a field somewhere about 50 yards away. The driver, Rob Conlon, that was just screaming, and because he collapsed the wheel, and the ignition key had gone through his ribs into his chest. Oh. And of course it was on its side, you know, and everything turned black and white, which is true in arms. And I remember it was just kind of slow motion, and shock hadn't set in yet, so I was just going, wow. And I stood up, you know, on the door because it was at 45 degrees, and checked myself. And then, you know, I tried to get out, and of course I couldn't. And I went, oh, bloody hell. And I could smell petrol, and I pulled the back seat away, and of course there was engine there, and I burnt my hands, and I went, oh. And then I heard the pompiers, you know, the firemen and the ambulances coming, and they cut Rob Conlon out, but they didn't think there was anybody else in the car. So it was the kind of fading away, and I'm going, help. Yeah. And then they finally came back and cut me out, and it was awful. And, you know, there was blood everywhere, but I wasn't driving. So that's my excuse.
Fair enough.
But, yeah, that was 1966, 2 weeks after England had won the World Cup for the only time, and probably ever will. So I remember that vividly, you know. And both boys are still alive, and George is still my best buddy, you know, in Newcastle. So, you know.
Well, that's good.
Just one of them things.
I never knew that, to be honest.
Well, there you go. You see, I keep it quiet. I bet, you know.
Scarily close to not being in ACDC.
Yeah. What's that? Hello?
Sorry, hello?
Hello, I've got you again.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, Brian, well, we noticed that from just checking out other stuff that you get up to away from the band, your day job, as it were. Really, you're turning into more and more of a TV presenter and sort of interviewer now with your TV programs, aren't you?
Yeah, I didn't really want to do that. It's just, you know, I had a long time off in between albums and all that, and talk when Gotch, my manager, just said, you know, would you like to do with, you know, this TV company would like to know if you'd like to present. I went, what about? And he said, cars. Well, that was it. And so it was wonderful. And I could get to the factories. I could speak to some of my heroes, you know, and one of the first ones we did was Bentley. And to talk about WO, and I have a 4.5 litre 1929.
Yeah.
And to me, it's me daily driver. And I know that sounds crazy, but when I mean that, it's probably every 2 or 3 days I take it out, and because it makes us feel, like I'm driving a proper car. And but as I get older now, it's starting to get a little bit tougher. It's a bit of a bugger.
No power steering.
It's nothing. But it's just something, that's magical about this car, that W. Bentley brought to the world, and I'm a Bentley boy. I've got 3 Bentleys, and I just love them. And the Rolls-Royce Phantom, which is my other daily driver. I've had it 14 years, and I wouldn't part with it for the world. It's, as an artist friend of mine says, when he first saw it, he said, "That's a David of a motor car." He thought it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and I agree with him,
Oh, definitely. I have to admit, I'm quite glad to hear you say that you drive these cars on the regular, because I am aware that there are a few cars in your collection that you have donated to different museums and other collections. And I've always wondered, why would you buy a car and not want to drive it?
Exactly. I've been to a lot of good friends, man caves, if you call them, big barns, and they've got about 50, 60 cars in there. And, and they cover them in white cloths and all of this. And it looks, and I hate to say this, but it looks like a morgue. And you pull one up and you go, wow, look at this Porsche. Yes, that was in the Paris Dakar rally. And it's still got the original dirt on. Well, why don't you fucking wash it? No, excuse me. Why don't you wash it and take it out? Take your lass out for dinner in it. It's beautiful. And exactly. No. I said, has it turned the wheel since you bought it? Absolutely not. What? It's too expensive. What's the point? It's like, first of all, some of these super and hyper cars that are out there, just literally, I thought I'm really going to try to buy one, because I love the Bugatti Veyron, but I've heard from other people that the Bugatti Veyron, it owns you. You don't own it. You do what it tells you, or the company. So I thought I'd go for the Aston Martin Valkyrie.
That's a car.
You can't buy one. The collectors have bought them all. You go for anything, the collectors have already bought them, and they'll probably be for sale in about 20, 30 years' time for 5 times the money, with about 68 miles on the clock. What a waste. In these days when electric is coming up fast, and who knows what governments will impose on you. You'd probably be able to drive your piston car at 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Friday. That's your spot. That kind of thing. These draconian measures that may come in, it scares me.
Am I are we to believe then that you're not a huge fan of electric motor vehicles?
Well, I'm just a stubborn old, of course they've got to come. There's no other way. Oh, is there? Is it just, we're told this is what you're going to get and you're going to drive them, whether you like it or not, because we're not making anything else. I'm a great believer in, like the I cars, with a little 3-cylinder, recharging the batteries all the time. That sounds more sensible than, I've got too many friends who bought Teslas and all that, who have got home sweating, they've done a 130-mile round trip, and the thing says you have 280 miles range, and there's a detour, or or something happens, and the cars slow you down to 55. You can't go any. It tells you what to do. That kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know about you boys, but especially if you like to go driving, and journeys and all that. So not yet for me. And I don't want to sound like some old. Well, I am an old fart, but then never mind.
Well, you make an interesting point there about going driving, and I suppose for someone with a car collection like yourself, Brian, and it was said that you wrote a few years ago a musical. Is that right?
Yes, I wrote it with a friend of mine. Yes, he passed on. Bless him, and that's fine. Basically, it got signed up and lots of money into it and all of that, and then Brendan Healy, my brother, he was 59 when he died of cancer. It was. But it was many years before that when he really started to go downhill, and it'll see the light of day one day. But at the moment, it was so much fun, with Brendan, and but it was an orchestral thing because Brendan was there's a bona fide orchestra leader, and arranger. He was tremendous guy, but he was a funny guy. You see, now Brendan, why I always used to laugh with Brendan was he'd always buy a car that was just on the point of extinction, and he'd buy maybe a Volvo or something for about 250 quid, and he would drive it till it broke, and then scrap it and buy another piece of crap, and to his mind it was the most sensible and economical way to drive a car. He never took it in for a service. He didn't know where to put the oil, and he just drove it until it dropped to bits. He was brilliant. And of course there's the fabulous story when he got stopped, drink driving. He just finished an after dinner speech. That's what he did as well. He was a very funny man, and he got stopped just outside of Gosford on the A1, and the policeman said, "Out, have you been drinking?" And he said, "Fractionally." And they got out, and he said, "Right, you're done." He said, "You're absolutely the drunkest I've ever seen anybody." And just then an accident happened behind him, a really bad one, on the other side of the road, and where these kids had drove into a lamppost, and it was just, the fireman, he said, "Don't move, I'll be right back." Well, after 40 minutes, he hadn't come back, and Brendan was just tired, so he got in the car and he drove home. The next morning, there was a knock on the door, and it was a policeman that he knew from the village, and said, "Brendan, were you driving last night?" He said, "No." He said, "You sure?" He said, well, pretty much. And he said, "But you do have the car." He said, yes. He said, "It's in the garage." And he went to the garage and he opened the door. And the policeman said, "Brendan, how long have you been driving a police car?" "That's true." It was it was one of those pandas, the silly little pandas they had in the old days. And Brendan was a legend.
Wow,
that's incredible.
Well, with I was thinking, like, what do I ask? Considering the amount of cars that you are rumored to own, I mean, we can probably talk about how many you think you actually do own if you keep track. But for just mooching about, Brian, around town and stuff like that, because you live in Florida, right?
Yes,
now.
I live in Sarasota. It's a nice little place, Here we'll have the Bentley 4.5, the Phantom. We've got the Bentley Bentayga V8, the sport model. We've got the Audi R8. I've got the Morgan 3-wheeler, the MG 54 TF, and and that's all I really need. In the racing garage, we have the Royale RP4 1971 English sports racer. I don't know if you and we have the Porsche 9146 that Bob Snodgrass and Paul Newman raced together, which we got. because we used to hang with Paul Newman, who I loved because he smoked cigarettes and drank beer. He was a good lad, and he was fast as anything. I know. So my wife drives that's her car, the 9146, and you know, we had the Lola, which I just sold the Lola, and that was the T70 Mark I, which was raced by Ronnie Buckman in '65. And I got that from, you know, John Starkey. That was a lot of fun, the Lola. And, you know, it's the Royal, had the Pilbeam MP84. I don't know if you're familiar with that car. That's another English beautiful racer, 3-litre, which I won the Sebring 4-hour in. So I enjoyed that car. And I think that's in England now. And, you know, and now I've just ordered the Maserati MC20, which I think is a really pretty car.
Very, very pretty car.
So
when did you get that?
Well, I haven't got it yet. I've just ordered it from the dealer here, the Maserati dealer, and in Tampa, and which is just north of us. And I can't wait to get my hands on that. But I had the Richard Petty, I got the Richard Petty Mustang chassis number 1. I think he made 39 of them. And I got that one. And of course, I got the Jag Project 7, which I bought with great excitement.
The sound of that car.
What's that?
The sound of that car is incredible.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. But, you know, but the most, I get a lot of fun driving that Morgan 3-wheeler. Usually the shock on American people's faces when you're driving it, and again, what is that? You know, and when you drive the Bentley, you get some strange remarks, like this older gentleman who should have known better. He said to me, he said, "Man, I never thought I'd see a First World War German ambulance." I went, "Oh, fuck it off." I said, "It's a Union Jack on there, man. That's what that is, you know." And so, you know, you got to remember, this is Lexus land, Mercedes, BMW land, and you know, so it's great. But some of the people, you know, that I've met, some of the most exciting drives I've ever had. You know, I don't know if I'm getting off your subject, but I remember, you know, when I knew you were going to phone me, I was just thinking back to all the great things that, like, you know, when I raced, you know, my hero, it was Tadzio Nuvolari, because my mother was Italian and she had photographs out of Italian magazines. And when I did the program that, you know, you were talking about the Cars That Rock, we went to Modena, you know, and we went to Lamborghini, and we went to Alfa, and we went to the Balocco test track. And the people there were just absolutely fabulous, and they were big fans, and they said, "We have a surprise for you." And they came in and they said, "Try this on. This is Tadzio Nuvolari's helmet." Wow. From the museum. And I went, "Wow, this is great." And I stuck it on, and I went, "Oh," you know, with the goggles, I said, "Fours." And then they said, "Hang on, we haven't finished yet." And then these 4 immaculately white overalls with Alfa Romeo on there, in period, from the 30s, opened the doors of this garage, and there was the P3, Alfa Romeo P3, that he won the 36 German Grand Prix in, you know, against all odds, against the new German cars, you know, you know, the auto unions and the Mercedes, and I thought, oh my God, what a photo opportunity, and I can talk about it. And they said, "Get in. Would you like to drive it?" And I went, oh my God. So, you know, they let me loose on the Balocco test track, and I raced, and this guy was waving, and I waved back, and of course he was telling me, "Stop, you know, come back in." And I didn't come back in. I remember all my dreams, you know, I was somewhere else, and was stopped at the end as the sun was setting over the mountain. It was an absolute magical moment, you know. And but that's the lucky thing, you know, about, you know, when you get around cars. I think the camaraderie, you know, with the people you meet, you know, and the fans, the Alfista were there, and they took me to the little restaurant, the little cafe where Tad's, you know, all the racers used to go, you know, to eat, you know, the risotto. That was the famous thing, risotto. So, you know, and it was fun, you know, but, you know, meeting Vic Elford, you know, and being pals with him, Derek Bell is a great lad, David Hobbs, you know, and one of my favourites, you know, Paddy Hopkirk, you know, who taught me how to do 360s in a minute. Well, he was laughing. He just, that's great, Brian. You know, it's lovely day. You know, the girls love that, you know, when I was in college. When I was in college, the girls would, oh, you get the girls if you could do that. So, you know, and of course, Sir Sterling Moss drive one of his Alphas in Anstal Rally in 2016. You know, and when we got there, Sterling Moss was there, and he was good friends with Richard. And you know, I met him, and after all, you know, he's everybody's hero. And I couldn't speak. I just sat there like an idiot, just looking at this guy. And he was just absolutely lovely. And we went. At the end of the rally, was sat in the C-Type, 53 C-Type that he had won, I think, eight or nine races in. And he sat with me, and we were going to lead the parade lap at the end, round the town, you know. And he said, you drive, and I'll do the waving. I said, okay. And, you know, behind us were all the competitors. You know, there was Derek Bell in the big blow-up Bentley, you know, the cameras were on, and we were going to lead the parade. And he was talking, and, you know, and he just went, before we go, he said, I think you've got it in reverse. You know, because first and reverse in the C-Type was just like a finger's width apart, you know. And so he saved me a lot of embarrassment by being a good boy, telling us.
Yeah. Brian, do you perhaps, I mean, you've done so many different things and been around the world, God knows how many times. Do you think do you have any regrets about not getting involved in racing yourself, maybe at an earlier age?
Well, that's easy. You didn't have the money. Okay. I think, you know, somebody once said to me that vintage racing is the greatest redistribution of wealth on the planet. You know, we just didn't have the money. Of course, I would have loved to, you know, and you know, I still love it. Next week, I'm off to Sebring. You know, last year, I don't know if you know, but Jim Pierce, who was one of my co-drivers in the 2012 24 Hours of Daytona. You know, we're driving a prototype. Just one of the nicest guys. You know, wonderful teacher. You know, and he passed away with COVID. You know, 56. Fittest man I know, just a lovely fella, and it got him. And we're gonna set up a race every year, the Gentleman Jim Pierce Trophy, and an hour-long race, and it will be raced at Sebring because he won the 12 hours there as well. You know, so and I just love being around. There'll be about 350 cars there. And I'm just going to take the Royale RP4 just for testing, just for the test day, and see, you know, just dust up some cobwebs and just have some fun, you know, with the rest of the boys there.
Yeah, too right. When was the last time you did race, Brian?
Oh, flipping heck. I think it was... and the Classic 24 at Daytona, and I was driving at my new acquisition, which I'm very proud of, which I've been after forever, is the Chevron B8.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what a little beauty, a little 2-liter BMW. And it's just, you cannot get them. You got to wait till somebody dies or retires. They're just such a cracking little motor car.
Do you have, I know this is probably so hard for someone who has driven so many cars, but do you have a favorite? Yes, I've got about 5 of them. No, doesn't answer your question. Yes, I'd have to say, honestly, with all the cars I've driven, sports cars, I've had them all. Ferrari, Aston Martins, the one I enjoy the most, and that still shocks me, is the Phantom. It's, when you think of the size and the weight of that car, and you get a 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. I know it's not lightning quick anymore, but when you're in it, it just sort of defies everything. You think, well, how the heck does it do this? And you can drive forever and ever. Of course, there's cars that I love that are, like the Ferrari 458. Which I still see as one of the prettiest little Ferraris ever come out. I'd drive to, from London, get in the tunnel, on the train, and would drove to Prenois, Dijon, and when we raced at the track there, the Dijon race track, and in the minis, and I had I couldn't believe how comfortable it was. There wasn't much room, but it was cracking little motor car, And it also back home in England, in Henley, I have one of my favourite cars, which I bought the year before last, and I use all the time. And it's a 1964 Austin 1100, one-owner car, the family, and it's absolutely, and I just love it. You can tootle anywhere in it. It's just a brilliant car. It was the car that I passed me test in 1964. I took my first lessons in at the British School of Motoring in Newcastle, and they had Morris 1100s. And it was the first car that I was driving with 4 gears. The car that I had to sit up and beg Ford Popular, which only had 3. And I always used to take a big hammer with us, a 2-pound hammer, because when you got stuck, when you put it in reverse, sometimes it wouldn't come out. And I remember once having to drive from Newcastle. I went to see a girlfriend in Shield Field, just east of Newcastle, and I went, oh bugger! I reversed out of the cul-de-sac, and it wouldn't come out, and so I drove down the quayside backwards at night, all the way along to the Red Youth Bridge, went up the bank. And reversed. Honestly, I still don't know how I got away. There wasn't many cars on the road. Reversed all the way over the bridge, down the bank, and into Dunstan. And it was we tried 10 something mile an hour. And the next day, that's when this guy came up and he said, "Oh, I know how to fix that." And he gave the gearbox, just a good big whack with a hammer. And it came out. He said, "There you go." So after that, I learned my lesson. And that was my toolkit, a hammer.
And you can't do that with electric cars.
No. No. Listen to what's talking. But it's just, I love it. I've always said, when you're starting out, you're trying to get your first car, you get some adventures because you're buying. Well, I think now it's easier to buy a new car with the way you can buy it. But in the old days, you had to buy what you could afford, and that usually meant some really naff old car.
Full of character, yeah.
Yeah, full of this car has character. It won't start if it doesn't feel like it, you know. So.
Am I right in thinking as well? You used to use a pair of pliers to drive your first tour van.
Oh yes, well, it was an awful thing. It was a Morris J2. Get your head round that, me bunny lad. Sliding doors, engine in the middle, 3 on a tree, column change, and the bloody thing. Honestly, that it used to snap. I mean, on a regular basis, if you changed, in the gear and you'd gone, oh, bugger. So we had a pair of pliers, and we would get the wire, the wire that was linked to the gear lever, and would pull it through ourselves. It was an absolute, that was only an extreme emergency, like being stuck somewhere halfway from a gig, maybe in Alnwick, to get back to Newcastle, on the A1 or something like that. It was just we did some amazing things with those old vans, with the band vans. It was amazing that we lived, I mean, honestly, it was. We had a Commer van once, and it was an ex-baker's van, and it was always a smell of yeast. Human, I wouldn't know if it was human or just regular yeast, but it smelled really bad. And it was rotten. And we had all the gear in the back, and of course, we'd built this plank so that we could sit on it, because there wasn't enough room for everybody in the front. And we were driving toward the gig, and it was getting near sunset or something, and the floor fell out. I mean, not a bit of it, all of it, with all the gear. It was so, I mean, honestly, that's the kind of stuff we were driving around in then. And we, honestly, I just don't know how. And most of them, we weren't insured, and the tax disc was usually a brown ale label. From a brown ale bottle, which stick in the tax disc, which you couldn't see from far away. One time, one of the U-bolts on the back axle snapped, and a Ford Thames Trader. You got that one, boys? A Ford Thames Trader. And we got stopped by the police in Wallsend. And we said, "What's the matter, officer?" He said, "Come here, you." I was driving, and I went in the back. He said, "What's wrong with that picture?" We're looking at the back of the van. I said, it's nearly sideways. He went, "Exactly." He said, "You're not going anywhere in that tonight." I said, "Oh, come on, mate, we've got to get to work in the morning." It was about 11:45. And cops were different then, and he said, "Okay, follow me. Not more than 15 miles an hour." And he went in front of us, and he took us to the first, back home in North Shields. So, honestly, if he hadn't stopped us, I mean, that's how things could have come up, and we would have been in big trouble,
Mm-hmm.
But we drove them.
Yeah, and you've survived to tell the tale.
Just about.
Well, Brian, go on. Sorry.
No, sorry. I'm just saying the next night we had a gig at a youth club in Walker, so it wasn't too bad. So we had to put the gear, we stayed at the bus stop for the trolley bus, and the conductor says, "You're not bringing that stuff on here." And we did. He said, we said, "Oh, wait a minute, you were playing at the youth club up the street." He went, "Put the drums under the stairs, under the stairs." And we're all sitting with all the crap. But we would do anything to get, play a gig. Very good.
It's listening to some of these stories, and very entertaining, Brian. And you've also been talking to other people in your industry, in the music industry as well, about various things really in another TV series as well that I'm keen to watch. Tell us what that was like. Yeah. What was it? Life on the road.
Yes, Life on the Road, and it was fabulous. It was only going to be a one-off, talking to Roger Daltrey, and it went so well. They said, "Would you like to do it?" And when it turned into a series, and I enjoyed meeting some old friends like Mark Knopfler and me. Mark's a great car man. He really has got a beautiful collection. He's a hell of a racer. He's done Le Mans as well. And Roger Daltrey, Paul Rogers, Dolly Parton, for God's sake.
Yeah, I saw that interview. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, Robert Plant. Just good buddies, and Nick Mason. We don't need to talk about Nick's collection, do we? I mean, it's just ridiculously fabulous. And all these people, and we just finished the last one with Dave Grohl, which we did last February, just 3 days before it all shut down. And the sad thing, I remember he had his, the Foo Fighters had their album ready, and we had our album ready. And we parted ways and said, well, listen, we'll cross path on the road, our album's coming out soon, and so is yours, and good luck and everything. And, of course, we all know what happened next. We were just stuck. But I think the Foo Fighters album comes out next week in England. I think it's going to go straight to #1, so that's good for Davey. He's such a nice fella. And his passion is vans, vans. He just, we went for a drive in his 1966 Ford van, and he wanted it because he was always a fan of Scooby-Doo. So he wanted a van that looked like the Scooby-Doo van.
The Mystery Machine.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I have to say, having seen a few episodes of it, I do think, one, it's brilliant television, but two, I tended to get lost in the fact that you have the history that you do. You had the career that you did because, you seem so comfortable talking to all of these musicians that you kind of forget that you're not a journalist.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's too kind. But no, it's just, if I had a show on TV and I was talking to movie stars, I've just gone, I'm sorry, mate, I didn't know what you've done in the past. just tell them about the new movie and book her off. But with musicians, the wonderful thing about Life on the Road is that, and what I try to get at is because I'm not a journalist, and they feel very comfortable with me because I'm not looking for a headline. I'm not looking for a sensation or to dig some dirt, which, some journalists just, that's what they live for. And, and they feel safe. And with every one of them, I say, as soon as it's finished and done, you're the first one to get a copy. And if there's anything on there that you regret, please just tell me and out it'll come. I remember Billy Joel was just a little worried. He's a very cautious man, Billy. And the only reason he did it was because I've known him for so long. And, we do, and I always get up some of his concerts and sing with him at the end and all of that. And we'll have a damn good time. He's a good, just a great kid. And he was pretty nervous about doing it, which seems crazy, but a lot of guys are like that in this business after years and years and years of taking the hits, from journalists or bad stories and, with the success and everything. They get a little, they just get a little edgy about it all. And I understand, So it's lovely to see them smile and, and tell tales when they first started and how their mother and father, backed them, and help them to get through it. And it's usually, most of the tales were basically about the parents who, just said, go for it, kid, So it's wonderful,
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's the same sort of thing that it's just different, isn't it? Because, I mean, here we are, Brian, we've spoke for like 45 minutes now. We've not even mentioned your new album yet,
Oh.
We've just been chatting about cars and, your stories of clapped-up vehicles.
It's been a joy, the new album. Honestly, you can never take anything for granted in this business. ACDC or not, and Dave Grohl, the Foo Fighters, said the same thing. He said, we've got our fingers crossed. There's so many new acts coming out all the time, so many great songs, and like for us, I'm getting an old dog now. I'm 73 years of age, and I don't feel like it. And no, I just don't feel like it. Bollocks, you're what you are, and how you feel. But to think that you've still got this audience of young kids coming, and we get all these emails and things from all these kids like 9 and 10, and the very thought that we can start get people interested in rock and roll again, because mainstream is so, it's all tits and teeth in it, when you watch the videos, and it's the same, very good, all talented, look wonderful people, but when you hear the rip of a guitar and rock and roll, it's made for driving, and it really is. And and how many times have you stopped at a stoplight and you hear some guy next to you with 34 speakers in his car, and you just hear this bass sound, and that's it. There's nothing else. And he just wants to wake the neighborhood up. I love to get stopped in a minute and just crank some rock and roll up and going, okay, I'll meet you on the high street at noon. Don't you go with me, kid. I'm waiting.
Do you find yourself listening to AC/DC when you're in the car?
I never do it if anybody else is in, because it always sounds like you
listen to this.
Yeah, listen to this. Aren't I fab?
Do you recognise that voice?
Yeah. No, I never do. On the house, when people are in, it's like, the gold albums, all the things, all away somewhere. I've got an old English pub in the house, and there's a few things on the wall there. But the main things there are my trophies from racing, and memorabilia, from the track, and they've got some beautiful crash helmets from different race drivers, Roberto Marino, to name but one. That's okay to me, that just shows you have a passion, and you're not showing off,
Yeah, more than fair enough. I can totally understand that. I mean, obviously, as someone who has no musical talent whatsoever, I'd like to think that if I was good enough, I'd listen to my own stuff. But I think your answer is quite respectable there.
Yeah, you can in the car when you're by yourself, when you can sit back and enjoy it. Because, the thing is, cars are the only place left where you can listen as loud as you like. And I mean, headphones are great, but you're detached from the world. In a car, in a system, even the basic cars now have pretty good systems in them. And you jack the volume up, and some of the cars, some of the systems now in the Audis and the Mercs are just ludicrous. And I mean, it is, it's wonderful. You just got to watch it and go over the speed limit, because you get excited, can't you? Listening to Born to Be Wild or Low Rider or something like that, great driving songs, it'll get you.
We were we were talking just before we called you, Brian, and we were asking, with our limited time, what should we ask Brian Johnson? And one of the things that we decided not to, but I guess I'm going to ask you now, since you've had your hearing fixed, are cars sounding better now to you? Are engines sounding sexier again?
It's it's the depth that you miss when you lose your hearing, and of course technology has helped. And old hearing aids are tinny. Everything everything is tinny and high and, you know, and of course the new technology is it's just fabulous. But, you know, if you're at any kind of track still, you know, you have to put ear protectors in. You really do. I know so many racing drivers that have lost their hearing because they refuse to put protectors in. I always wore them. I always put them in because I was told to by people I respect. You know, they just said, always put them in, and it's true. Yeah, you know, you have to. Being deaf really is not fun, mate. It's a terrible thing. In fact, it's awful, you know. So, you know, what we hope this new technology, you know, the COVID thing has really stopped us going forward with this. It's a bugger because everything is geared towards vaccines and everything. So we have to wait for production things, you know, when everything's cool again. I'm afraid deafness goes to the back of the queue at this time. You know, but we'll get there, me son. We'll get there.
Indeed. I have to ask, you know, because we have kind of touched on the whole music thing. Can we expect another album in the near future, or are you now just enjoying your time, focusing on racing?
Well, I'm sure I goddamn hope. Well, I can't race right now. You know, there isn't any races, you know, right now. A good friend of mine, Martyn, who runs the Masters. Do you know that the Masters series in Europe?
Yeah.
He's here, and we were talking, and everybody's wringing their hands here. You know, David Hinton from HSR, which is the American, one of the American bodies here. You know, at the moment, all they can organize are kind of track days, you know, test days, you know, and stuff like that. And even they're very, very strict. You know, there's obviously nobody can come and watch. There's no spectators allowed. And everybody has to, you know, even the mechanics are all masked up and everything. And it's very expensive for these guys to bring these cars from all over the states to come and have a test day, you know. But Florida is such a fabulous place because of the weather, you know, and we've got Sebring and we have Daytona and of course, you know, the two of the most legendary tracks in America, I would say, right up there with Laguna Seca and Watkins Glen. And people just want to drive them anywhere. At Daytona, for the English guys, they just love to do it because of the banking. You know, there's not many tracks anywhere that have the banking. And I remember when I first did it, I just couldn't believe this feeling of, you know, it's a 38-degree angle. You know, if you can get your head around that, and you stand at the bottom of the track and look up, and you think the cars are just going to drop off. And of course, that's rubbish. You know, nobody's dropped off yet. But you know, it's a wonderful feeling driving around there. And the first thing you've got to get out is try to stop turning your head right. So you're trying to straighten up and watch it. You just stay where you are, and round you go, and let the G forces knock the stuffing out of you.
And of course, you are. I saw on YouTube, on I think it was your Cars That Rock YouTube channel, Brian. You've actually driven on the world's very first banked oval in Brooklands, of course.
Brooklands, yeah.
Well, you've driven on a bit of it, but yeah.
Yeah, there's only a little bit of it left, you know. Boy, it was really nostalgic, that. And I remember in the museum in the middle of there, you know, the producer was going, well, can Brian drive this? This was Tim Birkin's, Tiger Tim Birkin. Yeah, this was his car, you know, the original schoolboy hero, you know, one of the Bentley boys, you know, dashing, handsome, just, you know, daredevil. Won everything. And he said, well, yes, you can drive it on one condition. I said, what's that? He said, if you can start it. Oh, because it's secret to starting engines, you see, especially the old ones. It's like starting an aeroplane engine, you know. The switches and pulleys and diggies and dummies. And I got it started, and he went, okay, off you go. And what a joy. It was absolutely fabulous, you know. And of course, we couldn't go fast. We had to, we had to remember, that this was a very expensive motor car and a piece of racing history. Mm. And but just the thought of of getting near that track and being on it, it was wonderful. Of course, it was all wrecked in the Second War when they started building Lancaster bombers there. That's where they built the Lancaster bomber factory. It's just kind of interesting,
Yeah, and there's housing estates on there now and everything. But Brian, we could. I honestly feel like we've only sort of scratched the surface of like some of the things that we wanted to talk to you about, really, racing and cars and stuff. I honestly feel we could chat for hours, but I'd settle for 1 hour. So on that note, Brian, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day.
I hope my accent didn't get in the way again.
It's fine. Yeah, we heard every word of it, and it's listening to. We have trouble trying to listen to drivers talking over the scream of engines. Yes, I know you do. So that's one thing. But Brian, once again, fantastic hearing about your stories, and good luck with the band, whether you're touring. We'll keep our eyes peeled and stuff if there's news on that, as and when we're allowed to go, COVID allowing and stuff. So,
well, keep your fingers crossed, because we're just chomping at the bit to get out there, and it's just so frustrating. But I promise you, if there's a break, and we're on the blocks, we're on the starting blocks, and all the boys in the band are just desperate to get out and play again,
Yeah.
One day, Sarah, one day.
Indeed. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on Motorsport Radio today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, mate. Toodle pips for now, lads. Bye-bye.
Toodle pips. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.